On this land, order was kept by routine and watchful eyes.
He fed the hounds for years. Tonight the night would answer back.
Night in the Deep South, 1847. The cicadas scream in the humid dark, and the air smells of iron and wet earth. In the distance, the hounds howl, a sound that every enslaved person on the plantation knows by heart because those dogs are trained to hunt them. For years, a boy named Josiah fed those hounds, cleaned their pens, and learned their moods like a second language. He knew which ones snapped without warning, which ones could smell fear, which ones had tasted human blood. And every night he carried Scraps to the kennels with a downcast gaze, his wrists raw from the day's labor, his heart carrying secrets even heavier than the chains on his ankles. But tonight isn't like any other night. Tonight a storm gathers not only in the sky but in Josiah's chest. The animals stir restless. Thunder mutters far off. In the kitchen a knife glints. In the kennels the dogs whine as if sensing a change in their master. And somewhere between the swamp and the slave quarters, a plan long in the making is about to erupt. The boy who once fed the hounds is ready to feed them something else. How did a child beaten into silence transform into a figure whispered about in hushed tones for generations? And what exactly happened on the night when Josiah turned his pain into an act of chilling retribution? Josiah was born into bondage in the summer of 1835 on a sprawling cotton plantation in Mississippi. His mother, Ruth, was a seamstress for the main house, and his father was sold before Josiah was old enough to remember his face. By the time he could walk, Josiah was already running errands for the overseer. By 8, he was assigned to the hound kennels, an unenviable post that ensured he was always near the very creatures used to punish escape attempts. The plantation itself was a world built on terror. Rows of cotton stretching to the horizon, overseers on horseback carrying whips, and a big house where the enslavers held dinners under candlelit chandeliers while human beings cooked and served their meals. The hounds were part of the architecture of fear. Lean, muscled dogs trained to pursue runaways, tear at clothing, and drag bodies back to their captors. Feeding and tending them was both dangerous and humiliating, but it gave Josiah knowledge. He learned which dogs were loyal only to food, which ones could be soothed, which ones remembered kindness. Yet beneath that veneer of obedience, Josiah absorbed the daily cruelties, the lashings of his friends, the auction block where children were taken, the whispered stories of those who tried to flee and never returned. He saw his own mother struck for dropping a tray. He watched a boy his age locked overnight in the kennels for trying to steal bread. Foreshadowing lay everywhere. Josiah's gaze lingered too long on the overseer's keys. He paused when handling the scraps he fed to the dogs, testing their reactions. Neighbors whispered of a runaway with a fire in his eyes. No one could see the plan forming inside him. A plan born not of sudden rage but of years of calculated survival. The boy at the kennels was not just tending hounds, he was preparing an escape, and perhaps something far darker. Years blurred into a rhythm of heat, hunger, and obedience. Josiah grew tall, his wrists still scarred, his eyes harder. The plantation tightened its grip as the cotton market soared and punishments grew harsher. He witnessed his best friend Solomon whipped to unconsciousness for looking an overseer in the eye. He held his mother as she coughed blood after years of exhaustion. Each humiliation drove the nails deeper into the coffin of Josiah's boyhood, but feeding the hounds gave him a strange kind of power. He could move among them at night when others were confined. He could listen to hushed conversations of patrollers and overseers, who assumed the boy was deaf to their schemes. He began experimenting, feeding one dog extra meat, slipping another a taste of unfamiliar herbs, watching their reactions. He understood now that the animals weren't demons. They were tools. Tools could be turned, the imbalance of power was crushing. Josiah could not strike back openly. Any act of defiance meant death. Yet he started hiding small items, A bit of rope, a shard of glass, a key left careless. In the slave quarters, rumors flickered of revolt. In the woods, he marked trails no one else noticed. And always the hounds, their eyes reflecting the lantern light, their breath hot on his hands. By 1847, his plan had matured. A storm season loomed, offering cover. The overseer had grown lax, trusting the boy who never spoke above a whisper. Josiah had prepared something for the dogs, a concoction of meat and herbs to dull their senses. He had memorized the patrols, the times, the weak spots in the fence, but the town would wake up to something far worse. Because Josiah was not simply planning to flee, he was planning to make a statement so unforgettable that the name Josiah would carry weight long after he vanished into the swamps. He would use the hounds, the very instruments of his suffering, as the instruments of his escape and his message. The night arrived cloaked in thunder. Rain hammered the tin roofs, turning paths to mud. Inside the kennels, the dogs paced, restless at the scent of the storm, and something else in the air. Josiah moved among them with his bucket, calm, deliberate. He dropped the prepared scraps laced with herbs and fat, watching each hound devour the meal. Their growls softened, their eyes dulled. At the big house, the overseer dozed, unaware. In the quarters, whispers spread like sparks. Tonight. Josiah slipped the key from his ragged shirt, unlocked a gate, and stepped into the main yard. The storm masked his movements, but then a shout pierced the dark. Someone had seen him. Chaos erupted. Lanterns flared, shouts rang, and the weakened hounds staggered from their kennels. Josiah darted toward the barn, setting fire to a pile of dry cotton. Flames roared up, illuminating the night. The enslavers stumbled in confusion, their dogs useless, their eyes stinging with smoke. And then came the moment of reversal. The hounds, disoriented, no longer responding to their masters, turned back toward the source of the shouting. In the confusion, Josiah led a small group of escapees through a gap in the fence he had prepared. The rain cloaked their scent. Behind them, fire and panic consumed the order of the plantation. We don't have every detail of what Josiah did next. Records are sparse, written by the very people who wanted his story erased. Some claim he vanished into the swamp and joined a maroon community. Others say he led raids on patrols, a ghost in the trees. But that night marked a pivot. The boy who fed the hounds had used them to undo his captors. The storm died at dawn, but its echoes rolled for years. In hushed voices, people spoke of the night the hounds refused to hunt. The immediate aftermath was fury. Notices went up in town offering rewards for Josiah's capture. The overseer blamed the slaves who remained. Punishments were brutal, yet the legend grew. A boy who outwitted the masters who turned their own tools against them. Even among enslaved communities miles away, the tale spread, proof that resistance was possible. The legal record calls him a runaway. Oral histories call him a deliverer. Either way, his act revealed cracks in the system. By using the hounds, Josiah symbolically broke one of the strongest weapons of slaveholding power: fear. He demonstrated that knowledge, patience, and courage could subvert even the most entrenched cruelty. Decades later, when slavery finally fell, fragments of Josiah's story resurfaced in interviews and family recollections. A few elderly men remembered a boy with fire in his eyes. A woman spoke of the night the dogs went quiet. Whether Josiah lived to see freedom openly or not, his name endured as a whisper of vengeance and hope. Reflecting on his story forces us to confront the deeper truth. Systemic oppression breeds not only suffering but also ingenuity and resistance. Josiah's act was not a random outburst but the culmination of years of brutality. It was justice carved from pain. And so the question lingers like a thundercloud over history. Was Josiah's act revenge? Or the first shot in a war no one wanted to name?